How much sugar should we be having? We all know about sugar and diabetes, so it's wonderful to take this as a one-off topic and look carefully at what it does. Our distinguished speaker is Gopi Chandravarthia, who is a registered nutritionist, former NHS Hounslow and Richmond community nutritionist. She has been registered and has been practicing in this field for the last decade. She's worked as the lead nutritionist for the NHS in the community and is now working in the private sector, specializing in adult weight loss and management. Gopi is working with various food brands, creating nourishing recipes, and has worked at the London Obesity Clinic, again, specializing in weight management. So it's a huge pleasure to have her here today. A bit of a break from the endless doctors who sometimes people say, oh, we're having another doctor on Chai Chat. Well, this is a very important area because, as we've said many times, we are what we eat. So it's a very warm welcome to Gopi Chandravarthiva. Thank you, Gopi, for joining us. We know you're very busy. You have 15 minutes to make your presentation, and then I know a lot of people will be posing questions. I, as well, will have a question for you. So the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much, Keith. It's a pleasure to be here. So the topic today is the truth about sugar. There's a lot of information about sugar at the moment. So I know there's a lot of information around the internet, the media, there's a lot of research around it, but I thought I'd try and debunk the myths and kind of go through the facts and talk about sugar. So we know with diabetes, it's a non-communicable disease where the glucose in the blood can become too high. Many people suffer from diabetes. More people than ever now are at risk at type 2 diabetes and even pre-diabetes. And we know some of the risk factors of type 2 diabetes can lead to things like obesity, lack of exercise, family history, ethnicity, aging, high blood pressure, smoking, alcohol. So many risk factors can result in type 2 diabetes. And we know a healthy, balanced diet, regular exercise, maintaining a normal body weight can help with a lot of lifestyle changes. So I'm not sure if any of you have seen this or are familiar with this. This is the kind of government recommendations of what makes up a balanced diet. It's known as the Eat Well Guide. So what we recommend for a healthy, balanced diet and for a normal, average individual who doesn't have any serious medical conditions where their dietary intake has to be modified from the age of 2 onwards, basing your diet around the Eat Well Guide can make a difference. So as you can see, there's different food groups. So one of the good things about the Eat Well Guide is it doesn't say to exclude any particular foods. So we've got the yellow section, which is your complex carbohydrates. So all your whole grain options. And what we want you to go for is foods that contain more fiber. A lot of people think cutting out carbs can be a good thing, but actually carbs provide your main source of energy. So going for things like brown rice, maybe perhaps instead of white rice, thinking about the type of bread you use. So instead of white bread, could you go for wholemeal bread or rye bread? It makes a big difference by changing the type of carbohydrates and the quality of the carbohydrates as well, and the quantity. The other major food group in the green section you can see is your fruit and vegetables. So we should be aiming for about 5 portions of fruit and vegetables a day, a combination of fresh, frozen, canned or dried. But the more fruit and vegetables we include in our diet, the better it is for our gut health, our digestion and our immunity. And our body can't make many vitamins and minerals. So the best way to get it is from consuming a variety of fruit and vegetables. The next food group is your protein. So we need protein for kind of muscle growth and repair. It also keeps us full and satiated. So we have a range of protein-rich foods. So you've got your lentils and your pulses if you're vegetarian. You've got things like soya, tempeh, then there's the meat as well. You've got chicken, you've got eggs, you've got nuts and seeds. So by incorporating a range of protein in your diet, you've also got oily fish. It also helps with managing your hunger levels. The next section, you've got dairy as well, another important food group. We need dairy to support our teeth and bones and for calcium. So having a range of dairy in your diet can benefit us. Now, this tiny purple line you can see is your fats. So what we want is for you to incorporate fats in your diet, but be mindful of how much fat you are having and swapping the saturated fat for the unsaturated fat. And outside of these, of the Eat Well guide, you've got your fluids. So we should be aiming for 6 to 8 glasses of water a day. You've got your treats, the foods we probably like to indulge on a bit more often, but we're not saying to cut it out. We're saying to eat it less often and in small amounts. And sometimes reading the food labels can help you make better food choices. So going back to the topic of sugar, just to help you understand it a bit more, when it comes to carbohydrates, it's a macronutrient. So it provides energy as well as your nutrients. It's made up of sugar, starches, and fiber, and it's the quality and the quantity that can play a role in your blood sugar levels. So the more complex carbohydrates you opt for, so the ones that are high in fiber and are whole grain, instead of the refined carbohydrates such as your white bread, your white pasta, the high fiber versions will help balance your blood sugar levels. So let's look at sugar. So we know if we consume too much sugar, can lead to weight gain. With sugar, it doesn't have much of a nutritive value, so there's not much nutrition. It's almost like empty calories, and it can become addictive. Especially in children, it can cause tooth decay, which is, not great, especially in children. We see a lot of children having high sugary snacks. Now, the sugars that we need to be mindful of and eat less of is something called free sugars. You may or may not have heard of it. So free sugars are any sugars that have been added to your food and drink. And that includes things like honey. I don't know if you can see this honey bottle. You've got juices, you've got your smoothies, you've got your syrups. They are all considered as free sugars. There are about over 50 types of sugar. You've got honey, you've got syrups, you've got things like agave, fructose, white sugar, brown sugar, coconut sugar, golden syrup, jaggery, palm sugar, molasses, glucose fructose syrup, fruit juice concentrates, invert sugar syrup. These are all types of sugar. Palm sugar, jaggery, it's still a type of sugar. They all metabolize in your body the same way. It may have a more mineral content, like things like molasses may have a high nutritive value, like more iron perhaps, but it's still a form of sugar. So when it comes to free sugars, you want to be mindful of the sugars that have been added to your food and drink products. Okay, so even fruit juice. Okay, so it's recommended that we have no more than a glass of 150 ml glass fruit juice. Okay, that is some of the government recommendations. People think having fruit juice, it's all natural, but actually eating a whole apple is much better because you've got the fiber, you've got the structure. So when you have the apple, it digests and breaks down more slowly. If I juice this apple, one apple, you're not going to get a lot in your juicer. You'll need about 6 or 7 apples to get half a glass. So it's very easy for us to drink the apple juice rather than perhaps eat a whole fruit. But the whole fruit is much better for you than the juice. But again, no one's saying you have to avoid fruit juice completely. It's about being mindful of how much you have. So your natural sources of sugar are your sugars found in your milk, the lactose, and your fruit and vegetables, where it's within the cell structure. So how much free sugars should we be having a day? So the government recommends that free sugars make up no more than 5% of your daily calories. So most of that, as I've said, comes from your soft drinks, your fruit juices, sugars that have been added to your food and drink. So jams, chocolate spreads, biscuits, pastries, cakes, even sometimes tinned products like pasta sauces, baked beans can contain added sugar. The recommendation for free sugars is no more than 30 grams. So that's roughly about 7 sugar cubes a day. And it's very easy for us to consume more than 7 cubes of sugar, especially if you go to a coffee shop. A lot of the drinks can contain a lot of sugar because of the syrups. So, for example, if you go for something like in Starbucks, let's say, they have several drinks like a mocha or like a toffee latte. They all have a considerable amount of sugar. So you've got to think about how much sugar in total are you having in the day. So, for example, some drinks just to show you. So a can of Coke can contain up to 9 cubes of sugar. So just having that one can of Coke is your entire sugar intake for the day. We've got a chocolate milkshake here as well. That can also contain a lot of sugar. It contains about 10 cubes of sugar. So just some examples of how you can make better choices if you're looking to reduce the amount of free sugars in your diet. So for example, I want you to think about, what do you tend to have for breakfast? So many breakfast cereals can contain a lot of added sugar, but they're also advertised as high in fiber, whole grain, but be mindful and always look at the ingredients. So for example, you have a lot of cereals like the chocolate cereals, even porridge, the flavored porridge contains added sugar. You have cereal bars, croissants. But what can you do to optimize your breakfast so you can have more energy, you can concentrate longer, your blood sugars can be balanced, and you can keep going to your lunch meal? So you could go for something like Weetabix, shredded wheat. You could go for a nice natural porridge, and you could add fruit into it. You could add some nuts and seeds. You could add things like flaxseed. You could add things like peanut butter. So the more fiber and good fats there is, the more it will stabilize your blood sugars throughout the day. You could even go for something like wholemeal toast with eggs and avocado. If you're vegetarian, you can replace the eggs with something like scrambled tofu or even lentils. Greek yogurt, great source of protein and calcium. Why not have some Greek yogurt with some chopped fruit and some nuts and seeds? So always focus on what you can add into your diet rather than take away from your diet. Lunch meals, for example, instead of things like a sandwich or maybe more kind of fast foods or processed foods, why don't we think about making a nutritious sandwich? You can make a wholemeal wrap, you can make a wholemeal sandwich, and you can add your favorite fillings. Enhance it by adding more vegetables, more plant-based foods, more spices. Could you make a homemade soup? Could you perhaps make a plant-based burger? Could you perhaps make some homemade chips rather than kind of frozen chips? So it's also thinking about cooking methods that can make a difference. We should also be increasing our plant-based foods. The recommendations now is that we have about 30 different plant-based foods a week. So what I mean by plant-based foods is foods that are fruit and vegetables, your whole grains, your nuts and seeds, your herbs and spices. So the more diverse our diet is, the better it is for our overall health, our digestion, and our gut health as well. And it can also help us reduce the risk of certain lifestyle diseases. Dinner swaps. So pizza is quite a common meal. You've got things like takeaways. They sometimes can tend to be quite processed, high in saturated fat, sugar, and salt. But what can we do to make a swap? So, for example, could you make your own pizza? Could you use like a wholemeal wrap, or could you use a pita bread and make your whole pizza with some tomato puree? Add some vegetable toppings and some cheese. If you're vegetarian, could you make a vegetarian minced bolognese or a lentil bolognese? Use plenty of fresh herbs and spices and seasoning. Home make your curries, and try and reduce your salt and sugar versions of food, especially things like sauces, tinned products. They can contain some salt and sugar. So try to go for things that are reduced salt or low in sugar. So All carbohydrates are broken down into your body, into glucose to provide your body with energy, and they can increase your blood glucose levels. But like I said before, it's being mindful of the quantity and focusing on the type of carbohydrate which can aid in the management of type 2 diabetes. Reducing your intake of your total fats can help decrease energy intake and weight loss, as well as lowering cardiovascular risk. Both fats and carbohydrates can play a role in diabetes management. So just a take-home message. So if you do have diabetes or pre-diabetes, your aim is to kind of, I guess, manage or control your blood glucose. It's also important to look after your heart health. Lifestyle changes like your sleep, your diet, your physical activity can impact on your diabetes management. Consume a varied, healthy, balanced diet based on the Eat Well guide. Try and start to think about increasing your fiber, opt for foods that are low in sugar and salt and saturated fat, and start focusing on variety, diversity, color. Keeping a healthy body weight and increasing exercise will benefit our health long term, and following a balanced, healthy lifestyle. And it's all about everything in moderation. Has anyone got any questions?